Hi everyone, today I hope to give you some insight on individualized education programs. I will tell you what an IEP is, give you an overview of the disability categories that an IEP addresses, give you an understanding of the IEP meeting team, and tell you how I saw them used in the general education classroom. I completed my 10 hours of observation at Purple Sage Elementary School. Purple Sage is located on the edge of Middleton and Caldwell. It is part of the Middleton School District. I observed in a 3rd grade class. The teacher's name is Melody Craw. She graduated from Northwest Nazarene University and has been teaching locally for over 11 years. The demographics of this class included a fairly even mix of Caucasian and Hispanic children. When I first walked into Purple Sage, I was able to notice a few things right away. I knew before going to the school that it was in one of the lower socioeconomic areas of the Treasure Valley. This was something that I could tell right away because many of the kids were on the school's free breakfast program and many of the kids were dropped off by daycares. Another thing I noticed is that the teachers and staff seemed very supportive of the kids and generally pleased to be working at the school. The school had a really welcoming and friendly environment. Now let's jump into the basics of IEPs and then I will tell you how I saw them used at Purple Sage. An IEP is a document that outlines a child's special education needs. The IEP is exactly what the name says. It is individualized. No two students have identical IEPs, and it is the job of the special education teacher to write the IEPs in a way that best fits the child's specific needs. The individualized education program is also a legally binding document. Everything from the students' yearly goals to the students' in-class modifications to the one-on-one help that the students will get is put into the IEPs. These IEPs are also a roadmap, not only for the student, but for the teachers and parents as well. The IEP contains meaningful and measurable goals that are to be met by an appointed time. These goals allow the teachers to see how well a student is excelling and provides a map of what the student needs to be doing. The IEP is an accountability tool, but it is very important to keep in mind that it is not always a performance goal. Finally, this legally binding document must be completed and approved by the parents or guardians before any special education services are provided. For a child to be eligible for any special education or care, or even modifications in the classroom, the child needs to fall into one of the 13 disability categories. Currently, these categories include specific learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, intellectual disabilities, emotional disorders, multiple disabilities, auditory impairment, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, autism spectrum disorder, visual impairment, traumatic brain injury, and finally, deaf or blindness. One category that is growing at an extremely rapid rate is the SLD or Specific Learning Disabilities category. Specific learning disabilities means a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involving understanding or in using language that may manifest itself in lowered abilities to listen, think, speak, write, read, spell, or do mathematical calculations. Many kids are falling into this category because it encompasses a wide range of difficulties. A child would not fall into the SLD category if their learning problems were due to something else such as a visual, hearing, or motor disability. Once a child is thought to be in one of these 13 disability categories, the referral process begins. Step 1 is known as the Child Find. The state must identify, locate, and evaluate children with disabilities in the state who need special education services. To do so, the state conducts a Child Find. The child may be identified by the Child Find, or the parents may ask Child Find if their child can be evaluated. Step 2 is the referral or request for an evaluation. A school professional may ask that a child be evaluated to see if he or she has a disability. Parents may also contact the child's teacher or other school professional to ask if their child can be evaluated. Parental consent is always needed before the child is evaluated. Evaluation needs to be completed within a reasonable time after the parents give their consent. Step 3. Evaluation and eligibility is decided. The evaluation must assess the child in all areas related to the suspected disability. The evaluation results will be used to decide the child's eligibility for special education and related services, and to make decisions about an appropriate educational plan for the child. Step 4. See if the child is found eligible for services. A group of qualified professionals and the child's parents look at the child's evaluation results. Together, they decide if the child should be considered a child with a disability. Step 5 is an IEP meeting is scheduled. The school system schedules and conducts the IEP meeting. They contact the participants, which always includes the parents and some other key members that we will discuss momentarily. And they make this meeting in a place and time that is agreeable for both the parents and the schools. In step 6, the IEP meeting is held and the IEP is written. The IEP team gathers to talk about the child's needs and to write the student's IEP. Before the school system may provide any special education or related services for the child, the parent must give their consent. The child begins to receive services as soon as possible after the IEP meeting. If the parents do not agree with the IEP and placement, they may discuss their concerns with the other members of the IEP meeting team and try to make an agreement. Next is step 7. Services are provided. The school makes sure that the child's IEP is being carried out as it was written. Parents are given a copy of the IEP, as well as the child's teachers and service providers. These teachers and service providers know his or her specific responsibilities for carrying out the child's IEP. This includes the accommodations, modifications, and supports that must be provided to be in keeping with the IEP. Step 8. The child's progress is measured and reported to the parents. The child's progress towards the annual goals are measured as stated in the IEP. His or her parents are regularly informed of the child's progress and whether or not the progress is enough for the child to achieve the goal by the end of the year. Step 9. The IEP is reviewed. At least once a year, the IEP team gets together to see if the IEP still applies and is in keeping with the child's needs. Parents can make suggestions for changes, can agree or disagree with the IEP goals, and agree or disagree with the child's placement. Finally, it is step 10. The child is reevaluated. At least every 3 years, the child must be reevaluated. Its purpose is to find out if the child still continues to be a child with a disability, or if they're able to move out of the special education program. Now let's talk about a few key members that must be a part of the IEP meeting. These members are a parent or guardian, the student's general education teacher, the special education teacher, and a district authority, which is usually the school principal. All of these members need to be involved in every single IEP meeting in order to keep it legal. The student is not required by law to attend the meeting, but in some cases the student will be part of the meeting. This occurs especially if the student is older and has valuable input that may help the meeting to be more successful. One final member of the meeting team that is not required but sometimes attends is a service personnel that has extended knowledge of the child's condition. Now that you have a basic understanding of the purposes and parts of an IEP, I will tell you how I saw them used in Purple Sage. Ms. Craw had 4 students on IEPs and 2 who were in the process of getting IEPs. 3 of the students on IEPs fell into the specific learning disabilities category, while the other child had a behavioral disorder. All of these students spent about 25 to 50% of their day in the special education room. The other portion of the day was spent with their peers in the Gen Ed classroom. While observing in the Gen Ed classroom, I took notes of a few of the in-class modifications that were made. First, in order to channel some of their extra energy, 3 out of the 4 students were either using T-stools as a chair, or their chair had a really large rubber band around the bottom that they could use to play with while they were learning. I also noticed some lesson plan modifications as well. Mrs. Craw often simplified their assignments and only focused on a few of that lesson's major components. One of the children who had severe learning disabilities always received shortened tests. Also, one child who could barely read was given a picture calendar that mapped out his or her day without using any words. All of these modifications were very helpful. They helped to keep the students from being overwhelmed while still allowing them to be part of the class. Alright, let's see what you've learned. Question 1. How many disability categories are there currently? Question 2. Name 2 of the disability categories. Question 3. The student is always a required member of the IEP meeting. True or false? And lastly, question 4. Special education at public schools costs the parents a small fee. True or false? Alright, let's go over your tests. So question 1, the answer is 13. And for 2 of these disability categories, you could say any of these 13. Specific learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, intellectual disabilities, emotional disorder, multiple disabilities, auditory impairment, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, autism spectrum disorder, visual impairment, traumatic brain injury, deafness, or blindness. Question 3 is false. The student is not a required member and they're not legally needed to be at the IEP meeting, but sometimes the student will come if they can give helpful input. Question 4, the answer is also false. Public schools are required if a student is on an IEP to give all services listed in the IEP free of charge. Alright guys, I hope you've had a good overview of what an IEP is, who's involved in making the IEP, and how they're used in the general education classroom. Thanks!